Hello, this is Pure Blue Octopus, and today she made me play Tales of Berseria. Warning, this podcast may contain spoilers, and sometimes I tend to have a potty mouth, so it may contain bad language.
Hey guys, Kalisa here. Welcome again to She Made Me Play, a podcast where one of us picks an RPG that we have played and the other hasn't and force the other to play it. We then discuss the game from the angles of having played the game before and first-time player. Joining me as always is I almost wanted to call you my minion, but whatever. Pure? Hey, what's up?
I am definitely not your Malakim, or however you pronounce it.
That's close enough, I guess. So, how do you feel? First Tales game that I finally made you play.
Yeah, so I've known you for like a dozen years, and you've been telling me about Tales like for forever. And I have literally never played them. I have watched you play parts of Tales, and I see it, and I'm like, ooh, that's not for me. When I see the anime aesthetic and the silly jokes and it's just, I never thought it was my thing.
Well, we both played the game using the Steam version. Xbox controller, at least I did. You did too, right?
Absolutely. I played the Steam version. I used an Xbox controller, and it worked great.
And I also noticed that you downloaded some DLC,
Well, we had the Steam sale just recently, so all the DLC was 50% off. So I did pick up the sexy pirate velvet outfit and also the idol outfit. So I had like a sexy pirate badass velvet for my playthrough.
That sounds just like you, actually.
I like what I like, okay?
Yeah, that's true. Anyway, Tales of Berseria was released on PlayStation 4 and, as you heard, Steam in January 2017 and was the 18th game in the main Tales series. Tales of Berseria was actually the prequel of Tales of Zestiria, taking place thousands of years before Zesty, but being released a year after that game. The name Berseria actually came from a play on word berserker, since the main game revolves around emotion and reason. Tales of Berseria actually is considered one of the first main Tales games with a female protagonist. Now, I know a lot of people will probably tweet me or email me saying, hey, what about Tales of Xillia? Yeah, Tales of Xillia did have a female protagonist, but she was a dual protagonist. So you in that game got to choose between Mila or Jude to play the game through. So that doesn't technically count as a single female male protagonist, main protagonist. The game was more graphic, has heavier themes than normal Tales games. They even censored a scene for the Western audience. Pure, do you remember the scene near the beginning of the game when Artorias sacrificed Velvet's brother Laphicet?
Absolutely.
Well, in the Japanese original version, he actually stabs Laphicet through the chest with a sword and holds his body up over the well.
Oh, wow. It's in the US version, we just see the body after it's been stabbed with like blood, but we never see like the sword go through.
No, they changed that with he uses magic. For some reason, I guess that was better than stabbing a child. But actually, they did that so they could preserve the Western release and make it a 16 rating.
Well, that makes sense, I guess.
Yeah, I guess if they actually saw a child being skewered here, it would be a higher rating. I don't even know. But yeah, they totally censored that, and a lot of people were against it when it first came out, and people realized about it.
Still, a pretty minor change and not worth, like, causing a fuss over.
Yeah, a lot of people like having a fuss. I actually saw the original cutscene of that, and it's tough to say, but I mean, both are pretty horrible, but seeing Laphicet skewered and hanging over the well by Velvet's brother-in-law, it's just, to me, more tragic,
Yeah, it's really tough for me, and this is something that I found in Japanese games sometimes. They will have these tragic character deaths, but I always feel like they tend to be too soon for me. Like, I don't have much of a connection with the character before they're killed, so it's very difficult for me to feel much emotion.
No, we won't get into your emotions. So, being the first Tales game, and I know you're a graphic whore, what did you think of the graphics?
Gosh, that's a really good question. I have very mixed thoughts on the graphics. Let me see. First of all, I was playing on 4K TV and it ran great at 4K 60 frames per second, so it was super sharp and ran perfectly smoothly. But the graphics were very, very mixed, I would say is the best way I can describe it. Like, sometimes they were perfect, and I was like, wow, this looks really good. And other times, I would be walking down a hallway, and it'd literally just be like flat floor and 4 flat walls, and it couldn't have been simpler. It seemed really oddly stuck between generations. Now, I play a lot of AAA games that you don't play, so I'm really used to the hallmarks of this generation, and I felt like everything felt very sterile and very video gamey, and most environments were very, very empty.
Yeah, bland.
Yeah, very, very bland, very, very simple. No debris or litter or objects, just making something. And when there was an object, like in one of the hallways or something like that, it was just, oh, this is a rock. There's a rock here. Oh, there's a chair here. But there's nothing else. It's like the only thing.
Yeah, and one of the things I always thought weird about the game, what was the point of the rock break-in or the root burn-in? Was it just to give us something to do in the dungeon?
I totally did not understand that at all, because why would you have a puzzle? Like, there are lots of games which will have a blockage in a passageway. Like, oh, you need to go get the this to be able to break it. Like, okay, I can come back later. But in this game, there are some of those, or what appear to be those, which I never got to get past. But then there are also these blockages where you walk up to it and you just push a button. And, you know, there's a line of dialogue where they're talking about how to break this rock. And Velvet's like, well, I can kick it. And she kicks it, but she doesn't even do it like a tough kick. She does the weakest kick she does, and the rock just shatters. And you're like, well, if it was that easy for her to kick, why would she even bother saying anything? Because she does the lamest little kick. And I thought, sure, maybe have them struggle and maybe hit it together or something, but just to do this lame thing. And then the same thing with the vines, where you walk up to the vines and it's like, oh, I can't get through here. And then someone says, oh, well, you just use your lighter. And then she pulls out the lighter and just does it. Like, why even have the thing there? I just don't get it.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I always wondered too the first time I played it. And I guess it was even worse the second time I played it, because I knew you were playing it for the first time. And playing it again, I was like, oh, wow, Pure's going to think this is really lame. And it actually is kind of lame.
And being a lifelong gamer, I've seen the same mechanic, I don't even know, countless times in games. I don't think I've ever seen it where you don't have to do anything. I've seen so many blocked passages from, obviously Metroid and Castlevania and Tomb Raider and things like that, where it's like, oh, I need to go get this. So I was like, oh, cool, I'm going to have to go get a lighter, or I'm going to have to go get a strength thing. And then it's like, oh, no, just hit A. Like, okay.
Yeah, I agree. It's almost like they wanted to give us additional button presses, something to do as you're just running down this very long, empty hallway, I guess.
Well, in their defense, if it wasn't there, it would just be an empty hallway with some random monsters.
Yeah. Speaking of monsters, what did you think of the monsters actually being on the map?
I love it. I love it, love it, love it. In any JRPG where you can see the monsters. No matter how they do it, if you can see the monsters, it feels much better to me. I definitely appreciated this over Final Fantasy VI, where you did not see the monsters most of the time. It gives it more of a Western feel to me. I still don't love the battle maps where you transport somewhere different to have a fight, because that's just... And the more I realize it, that just doesn't exist in Western RPGs. In Western RPGs, you almost always just start combat wherever you're standing. It doesn't go to some kind of special mini game. And I really appreciate that, because it makes the combat feel more integrated into the world. But I did like that in this game, there were lots of places where you could tell it was not just a battle map. It was kind of exactly where you were, that you were fighting. And I definitely appreciated that. And I really appreciated seeing the enemies.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really pay attention to it as much the first time I played, but I was on I'm pretty sure you made it that far, that lake field
Absolutely, yes.
with the flowers and stuff. And I went to get a chest behind this big kind of vine. And an enemy attacked me. And the vine was actually there. And I actually had to move around the vine during combat because it was a physical object in my way now.
It's funny, when I was just saying that last part, I was thinking of that lake area. What is it, Geddes Lake Road or something like that?
I believe so.
I remembered seeing like the individual lakes in the background of the battle maps and like formations of the islands, and they were all the correct shape in the battle maps, and that added a lot to the experience. Speaking of that and of the graphics, again, very, very uneven. That lake area was really quite breathtaking. It looked really fantastic. But then some of the dungeons inside looked awful, especially the fortress, the sea fortress, I forget what they call it, with the gate. Boy, inside there, that was some PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 thing. If it wasn't at 4K, I would have definitely thought it was a PS2 game. It was really empty. And it just really shocks me looking at modern games. I remember there was one section where I was on the top of the fortress and I had to go outside and along a little walkway. And on the walkway, there was literally nothing. There was one little thing to pick up. And of course, the things you pick up are literally nothing. They're just glowing dots. And you just click on them. But there was no railing. There were no barrels. There were no lookouts. And in a game today, it would be full of stuff. There would have been probably a railing. There might have been chairs. There might have been telescopes. There would be a whole bunch of stuff there just to make it feel like a real place instead of like a fake video game place.
Yeah, I agree.
And let's be totally clear here. This game came out in what year? 2018?
2017.
2017. So this is not, PlayStation 1 game, or this is not a very, very early PS3 game. This was launching on PS4.
I'm pretty sure, well, I could be mistaken, and I'm sure a lot of people will correct me, but they used a lot of pre-made things from Tales of Zestiria, since it was a prequel. And people that played Zestiria will definitely see this in the dungeons and landscapes. And Zestiria was made for both PlayStation 3 and 4 at the time. So when they use the elements from Zestiria to Berseria, it just seems like they didn't upgrade that to specifically be for PlayStation 4.
So you're saying they may have reused PS3 assets?
Possibly, yeah.
I am unbelievably shocked. Just kidding. I am not shocked.
Yeah, that's what I think happened, because I'm pretty sure I remember, and obviously when you play that, we'll go over it in more detail, but I'm pretty sure that Zestiria was made for both PlayStation 3 and 4 at the time, and now they reused a lot of the assets for Berseria.
It definitely felt like a PS3 game at a higher resolution.
Yeah, a lot of things were definitely empty. That lake road, though, was, obviously, it's been a few years since I replayed it, but that was probably one of the most beautiful zones in the game that I remember.
Yeah, you could tell it was having like a strange generation, like straddling effect. And that there were some places where, oh my gosh, this water looks really cool. And then you get those empty hallways with just literally, just like 4 polygons for the 4 walls.
Yeah, like the sewer.
Yeah, the sewer was real bad.
The sewer was really bad. And it wasn't even a puzzle. It's just go here, press these things to lower the water. That's it.
Yeah, now that you mention it, that's very similar to the vines and the rock thing. Like to give you something to do just to do it, but without any actual puzzle or actual challenge.
Yeah, I agree.
Just go here, hit this one thing once, and that's it? It's compared to something from like Nintendo or a Castlevania game or something like that, it's just so shockingly simplistic.
Yeah. And I wish they had puzzles in it. Obviously, my favorite thing in the game is the story and the characters, which we'll get into a little more. But we've already seen hopeful pictures of the new Tales game coming out next year. So all this should be changed.
Yeah, hopefully.
But yeah, we'll get into that later too, maybe someday. So we talked about the monsters. We'll go straight into that with the combat. The combat actually has a name for it. They call it the Liberation Linear Motion Battle System.
Because of course they do.
Yeah, of course. What did you think about it?
I have mixed feelings on the combat. So the combat brings me to one of the things which is classic JRPG stuff, which really aggravates me to no end.
You're talking about the different, like, quote-unquote, you hit an enemy and then get transported into a different map, or?
No. I'm talking about waiting to introduce mechanics.
Oh.
And this is one of the biggest problems I have with JRPGs, is I always feel like it takes so long for them to reveal the fullness of the actual game to you. Like, I'm not a fucking idiot. You don't have to wait 8 hours to tell me about the super break attacks or whatever they are. You don't have to wait 5 hours to tell me, oh, you can attack an enemy from behind. My very, very first instinct when I went to the map, when I first got out of the first place and I tried to attack an enemy, I'm like, oh, I bet I get a sneak attack if I attack from behind. Like, no, it doesn't work. And then 5 hours later, they tell me, oh, by the way, if you go from behind, you get a bonus. Well, why? I mean, sure, maybe not the first combat, but maybe after the first combat, just pop up a window, say, hey, did you know you can attack from behind?
Or even later on than that, when the enemies group up.
Yeah, exactly.
And you have like a group attack.
All those things could have been introduced within the first 2 hours instead of waiting for 8 hours to reveal all of them. And this is something that we saw in Final Fantasy VI, that we see consistently across JRPGs, is introducing mechanics many, many, many hours in. Now, I get it. If it makes sense in the story, that's fine. Like, in Mass Effect, introducing the Mako ground vehicle a couple hours in. Sure, because, you weren't on the ground. But if I was just fighting an enemy and attacked it from behind, give me the benefit of the attack from behind and explain how it is when I do it.
Yeah, I agree. I think the only thing that had a good excuse was the mystic arts, because you don't gain them until a certain level anyways. But everything else I totally agree with.
Sure, but even the Mystic Arts could have been sooner.
Well, you don't get them, I think, until level 20, so...
Well, who determines that?
Well, true.
But other than that, the combat system, I definitely, in addition to all that, I had mixed emotions about. Number one, I definitely enjoyed it a ton more than just your standard RPG combat. But at the same time, I felt like it was... Let me see how I can phrase this. It was overly complicated for the difficulty. There were so many different options, and I played on normal difficulty, but it was like, for someone like myself who has played a lot of games with difficult combat, one of my crowning gaming achievements is that I have beaten Bloodborne. This combat was super easy for me, and I did not lose a single fight the entire game. I had one difficult combat where I had one person get downed, but overall, I just blew through all of the combat, even bosses or the red zone enemies or whatever they call them, the red demons. They were all pretty much just super easy to me. And I was actually a little bit disappointed at how quickly I killed all of the bosses that I faced. A lot of them, I felt like I didn't even get a good chance to see them because they died so fast.
Well, that's because in Tales games, normal mode is kind of like a Western RPG story mode.
I thought about turning up the difficulty, but I didn't want to get bogged down in the combat. And I wanted to see how the developers intended it to be played. And I liked the complexity. I think that the overall game design of the controls was not good enough for the complexity that they were trying to get to. And this is something I've seen before in other games where the developers really wanted to make something great, but they just didn't have the chops for making the input latency correct and the sharpness of the controls. So even though you have a lot of options, it doesn't have the feel of something that's much more precise, like a Dark Souls or a Bloodborne or something like that.
Yeah, but I don't think that's what they were going for either. Especially me playing some of the really older Tales games, the combat is very similar, but it's evolved a lot. And I actually really like the combat. Now, granted, I also like turn-based RPGs, but the Tales combat to me was always just really interesting and, really fun, where I'm not really excited to play Bloodborne, personally.
Oh, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. I actually really liked the combat. I thought it was a huge improvement over a lot of other JRPGs like Final Fantasy VI or something like that. And even looking at something more modern with a more advanced turn-based combat system, like something like Octopath Traveler, I would say that this combat system was equally engrossing. I didn't dislike it. I'm just saying that I feel like it was more complicated mechanically than the precision and difficulty of the combat allowed. But I really enjoyed it overall. I found it to be dynamic. I loved it when I would activate. I played Velvet the entire time in every single combat. And I loved it when she would say, devour, and she would swing her giant demon hand. And then when I would do the, all the special attacks that would come when her demon powers went away. I thought it was all great. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it brought a really great angle and excitement to the combat, which was sorely lacking in a lot of other JRPGs.
So you said that you played Velvet the whole time. Did you try to play as anyone else in their combat? Because each character has like a different combat mechanism in the Tales games.
I did not. I enjoyed playing as Velvet, so I just kept playing as Velvet.
Now, a lot of people are probably going to kill me for saying this. I've tried. I don't like playing casters in Tales games. Because, I mean, you had Laphicet in your party. Did you get Magalu
I did not get to Magalu
yet? Okay. As you saw with casters, they literally stay there, casting a spell, they have a cast time, and if they get interrupted, the spell's interrupted. Kind of like, I guess, if magic was real. As a caster, that's how it is. In the Tales games, you press a button, you wait for the spell, then you might move around, press another button, wait for the spell. I've tried to play casters before in the Tales games, and some people really enjoy playing them, but I just never liked it. And the more I thought about that, and people can tweet me to correct me, I'm pretty sure that every main protagonist in a Tales game has combat very similar to Velvet. They're usually really fast, they're usually very arts heavy, but in here they're called kind of combos, and very little spells. The only character I can think of, main protagonist off the top of my head that I could think of that actually had spells was Jude and Mila from Xillia. And Jude didn't have many spells at all. He just bashed enemies with his fists, but his combat was very fast-paced like Velvet.
I could just imagine casting a spell and waiting 2 seconds for an enemy to hit me. It would make me want to pull my hair out.
Yeah, but a lot of people actually, I've seen a lot of people in forums and on Reddit talk about how they loved playing as a character from Berseria that you don't know yet named Rita, and all her abilities were pretty much casting. So, but yeah, I've tried it. I can't do it. It's very boring for a Tales game for me to do that.
Yeah, I can imagine. But overall, the combat was good. I thought it was well done and a nice change of pace from most JRPGs. We're going to actually play on the list an old Sega Genesis game called Sword of Vermilion, which I loved back in the early 90s. And it actually has a very similar style of combat.
Yeah, one of the JRPGs on my list has a very similar style too. Still in combat, though, what did you think of the party AI?
I thought the party AI was fine. I mostly didn't even really pay attention to them. I saw them fighting and doing stuff. I saw the settings screen to adjust their AI to different conditions. I never messed with it because, again, there were so many options, but I felt like I never needed to do any of them because I never lost. And many of the combats were literally over in seconds. So why bother tweaking things? But yeah, everything went fine and they killed stuff pretty quickly. There were frequently times when I was, had just finished the last enemy and they would be killing the other enemies at the same time.
Funny enough, once it's unlocked, the group attack with enemies, that's the only time I really fight random enemies anymore. Because it seems to me, gives way more experience than if you just fought like 3 different groups of enemies.
Absolutely. And after it was unlocked, I would go around the maps and clear the map by doing only groups.
Did you see, I'm pretty sure it's Berseria, I didn't get it to unlock, but if randomly during those combats you can face another enemy that appears after you fight those guys, and every time you face this enemy, it gets harder and harder throughout the game.
Yeah, someone told me about that, but I never saw it.
Yeah, I didn't either, and I did that a lot. It's weird. My first playthrough, I only ever saw it like twice, so I guess it's really rare and random. But yeah, I mean, once that was unlocked, that's all I did to level. Other than that, I was avoiding enemies when I could, mostly. Because there was kind of no point.
I always tend to grind in JRPGs, so I killed a lot of enemies. And probably one of the reasons that I didn't get as far as you, other than you, of course, knowing what you were doing, was because I killed a ton of enemies. Probably why it was so easy.
Well, the other reason, too, was because I beat it before I did the New Game Plus, so I was getting double experience. So, speaking of party AI, what did you think of the characters?
Okay, So you might think
I knew you'd have a lot of comments on this.
you might think that I've been hard on this game so far, but I really loved the characters and the story. I thought the voice acting was fantastic for the most part, and I really enjoyed.
I think that comment was talking about Benfu.
Not even Benfu.
His voice.
But yeah, I really liked the story. I liked the characters. I thought it was all interesting. The presentation is really great. At first, I was unsure about the dynamic because you've got all these different methods of presentation. You've got the in-engine 3D kind of cutscenes sometimes. The skits, which are just 2D, barely animated with voiceover. And then you've got the full anime, full screen video cutscenes. And they're like 3 totally different types of cutscenes. And sometimes it will actually flow from one to the other. And at first I was a little bit thrown off, but I really began to enjoy it. And I really loved the presentation and the way it went between those 3 types of cutscenes seamlessly. I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like it.
The skits have been, I don't think I've ever played a Tales game without the skits that I can remember. And they're just ways to get more personality into the character. Some of them are really goofy, some of them are serious, but they're mostly just to get you more attached to the characters themselves.
Absolutely. And I thought they were really well done. I mean, between all of that, I think the presentation was outstanding. And I have to give a couple of comments on the actual actors' performances because some of them were fantastic. Like, amazingly fantastic, and some of them were not. And strangely enough, or maybe not strangely enough, a performance I had the most problem with was actually Velvet, the protagonist. I really thought I get it, she's dark, she's emo, she's tough, but she doesn't have to, talk every conversation. Yeah, let's go do this. Let's go do that. I want to eat some souls. I mean, it doesn't need to be like that every single time. I thought Erica Lindbeck as Magilu was incredible. She brought once her character joined the game, I was so happy to have this interesting, funny, crazy character that everyone else could play off of because Rakuru, is that his name?
Rokuro?
Rokuro, yeah. Rokuro was very stoic and very straight man kind of thing, and Velvet was the same way. So they didn't play off each other very well. But as soon as Magilu came in, she brightened up the entire game. And then the addition of Aizen, who was much better than the other 2 as well, really had a great dynamic. And I have a question for you.
Sure.
Did you look up or did you recognize who plays Aizen?
I didn't. You're going to tell me, though.
Do you recognize the voice?
I know I've heard him in many different things.
You absolutely have.
Is it Liam O'Brien?
No, but you're real close.
Who?
It's Taliesin Jaffe.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
I never would have guessed that.
So you saw him at Critical Role Live. We're both big Critical Role fans. So yeah, he did such a great job. He wasn't disguising his voice, but he was so into the character that I didn't recognize it was him, and I actually had to look it up. It's like, wait, is that Taliesin? Erica Lindbeck, I've loved her in a ton of different things. She does a lot of great voiceover. She was standout as Celica in Fire Emblem Shadows of Valentia, and she was amazing in this. She actually sold the entire story to me. When they went into the main city and disguised themselves as Magalu's Menagerie, that was so probably one of the greatest moments in the entire game. And one of the funniest moments I can recall in a game in years. And I was very impressed by that. So overall,
Act like a dove.
Coo. It was pretty great. And that really brought it together for me. I have to say that all the performances were fantastic, combined. But I really didn't love Velvet's performance. I thought it was a little flat, even though it was supposed to be. I'm sure she got direction to be super flat. Overall, the presentation was great. The story was great. And I would definitely consider wanting to see more.
Honestly, though, I kind of agree with Velvet, especially in the beginning. But all the characters, to me, kind of grow. And they have really great moments together as they, get more attached. To me, I really liked the dynamic with Laphicet. And not how protective, but how kind of, I mean, you might not have got to this point yet, but kind of like Rokaru and Aizen become like big brothers to him. And, you know, Magalu is there as like an annoying sister just teasing him and telling him fake things that he's going to believe and things like that. I just really liked the character dynamics, even though they were quote unquote all bad guys.
Absolutely, I agree. And I did get to those moments, and they really were well done. Before we get too far into the characters, we need to make one thing absolutely clear, because you use the word name Laphicet just so flippantly. First of all, Laphicet is Velvet's brother who dies in the very beginning, and then they meet someone else who does not have a name, and
That's why we said spoilers, duh.
And she just starts calling him Laphicet.
She named him that.
Yes, she named him that. You know what? Naming a little kid after your dead little brother, fucking creepy as hell.
Well, she's not exactly sane.
Well, yeah, but it's really, really weird. And then she talks about...
He kind of reminds her of him.
Well, of course he does. He's a little blonde kid.
That likes the sea and likes compasses.
Yeah, likes the sea, likes a compass, yeah. So it's creepy as fuck for her to do that and to start calling that. And then especially when she's like, oh yeah, Laphicet's dead. And he's like, what? I mean, it's definitely gets... I understand that's what they were going for, but it came to me as a shock that she would just randomly name this new kid after her dead brother.
I don't think it was random. I think it happened because she saw him being thrown off that building. She saw him being thrown off the building, and she just happened to call Laphicet's name because she saw her brother die in a very similar way. So what was she going to do when they're like, who's Laphicet? And she's like, oh, it's your name.
Yeah, you know what a normal person would do? It's like, oh, yeah, that was my little brother. And I just shouted it out.
She's definitely not a normal person. She's a demon.
Obviously. But yeah, that was creepy. But overall, the characters in the story were great.
So who was your favorite? Well, I guess you already answered that, Magalu.
Magalu was absolutely my favorite.
She's definitely funny. And the funny thing is, I said funny way too many times. The first time I played through, in the beginning, I found her kind of annoying and she grew on me. But the second playthrough, I loved her. The second I saw her, I'm like, yay, it's Magalu!
I didn't think she was annoying at all. I thought she brought a dearly, dearly needed lightness to the game that was so super heavy.
But it's obvious from cutscenes with her, despite her crazy antics and stuff, there's definitely something hidden with her.
Absolutely.
She knows more than she lets on, which is pretty awesome with her character.
I really liked all the hintings of like, oh, is she an exorcist or whatever? Because how does she have all these magical powers? I thought it was really well done.
So I know you were gonna pit Magalu because you like girls, and so you like Aizen better than Rokaru?
Absolutely. Rokaru was he's just such
I actually really like Rokaru.
He's such a stereotypical JRPG character. Oh, I'm angsty. I've got a secret sword that I never use. Like,
I actually don't think he's very angsty at all.
Yeah.
Compared to Velvet.
Yeah, I guess. I thought Aizen was much more interesting. He seemed much more layered than Rokaru. But Rokaru wasn't a terrible character. The only terrible character is Velvet. But I can totally get where they're going with the story, because obviously on this podcast, we only do the first 10 hours. I am positive, I would bet any amount of money that she's going to have a dramatic change of character. She's going to suddenly discover her hidden feelings that have been hidden away. And she'll probably shed a tear before the end of the game.
Do you want me to tell you?
No, it's okay because I may play this.
You actually might continue playing. Wow.
I might continue playing.
Then it's tragic. Because every time I see Aizen, I love him so much, but I know what happens to him.
Oh, don't spoil it for me.
Well, actually, you don't know. It's not until Zestiria.
Oh, fair enough.
In the other games. So that's weird because, like I said, Zestiria came out first. I played it. Aizen is mentioned a bunch of times in Zestiria. And then you play to actually see how he is, and it's like, oh, no! But anyways, that's, I guess, a major spoiler for you.
No, it's not. Something else, talking about, like, some of the mechanics, I was really, really disappointed when there were places where you had something to do, right? Like, you need to do something in this spot, but you couldn't do it the first time you get there. Specifically, in the fortress, there was this rock that you need to push onto another rock to break it. And I went to this rock first. And, I walk up to the rock. There's no prompt to do anything. And it's only after I've been to the place below, then I go back to the first rock, then it gives me the option to break it. And I found that to be really artificial.
Yeah, there's a lot of parts where you have to backtrack or do things like that. And I find that annoying too. A lot of people
in addition to that, we were talking about this game being kind of cross-generational, something that was glaring to me is why were all the zones so tiny? With all these little loading screens in between, it feels like it was designed for PlayStation 3 or something like that, with just the size of the actual adventuring zones.
Well, if they took the assets from Zesteria that was made for PlayStation 3 and 4, that would make sense.
So were some of the exact same maps used?
No, not the exact same maps, but you could see the graphics and stuff like that.
Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, obviously in Zesteria, there's places, names that would be recognizable in Berseria. But, I mean, they take place thousands of years apart, so not as much. So, we went over the characters. I mean, you did say that you didn't technically like Velvet's, voice acting anyways, and her emo presence. What did you think of her motivation and, quote-unquote, the bad guy, Artorias?
So first of all, I actually did like Velvet. I just thought she was a little flat. I thought she was badass looking. She looked like she wasn't going to take fucking shit from anybody. And that's probably one of my favorite things about her. And I love playing as her.
She did threaten to eat a little boy.
I loved playing with her and just kicking ass and taking names with a giant demon claw. So that I totally loved about her. As far as this whole story, now, obviously I didn't get to the end, but I didn't understand a lot of the motivations. I get it. Artorias killed her little brother. Sure. But it looks like Artorias may have helped save the world. I don't know. But it put him in a position of power. I understand why she's mad at him. Obviously, I mean, he tossed her in a dungeon for 3 years and, she became like a demon and ate people. But it seemed a little thin for this whole, plot to take over the world. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I guess she just went crazy when her little brother was killed.
And then being in a dungeon all alone eating demons for 3 years?
Yeah. It was a very unique kind of look. Now, you've often referred to this game and this character as an anti-hero. I really didn't see that. I saw her party as the good guys. I haven't really seen them as the bad guys. I think of it more like Star Wars or something like that, where, the government is just bad and corrupt. And, it's clear that Artorias is doing something shady to take over everything. I'm not really sure of his motivations. Why did he do all this? All of a sudden to get into power? He must have thought that he was doing something good for the world, but I really don't understand what it was. But as far as Velvet's motivations and her party, I see them as very similar to Han Solo and his party in Star Wars.
Well, the reason why I called them anti-heroes, and you hear it a lot in even the first town you go to, how the regular people are praising the exorcists and the shepherd Artorias, and how they quote-unquote save the world. But then when you talk to, maybe more shadier people, that it's not so black and white that other people see it as. So I refer to her and her group as anti-heroes because the world really does think Artorias saved them all. But did he really?
Yeah, I mean, I don't define an anti-hero by what the general populace thinks, because I think that a real hero can be fighting against forces of evil even when everyone else thinks that they're the good guys. But I think that still makes them heroes and not anti-heroes.
Yeah, but I don't think Velvet's party would think they're heroes at all.
No.
I mean, they actually said it very many times how, they're shady and, on the underground and...
Absolutely, but I definitely thought that they were heroes all the same.
So what part, because obviously it seems like not only did I make it further than you, but I know what happens. So where did you end your 10-hour playthrough?
So I got to the major city. The Gain? I can't remember the name.
Midgan?
No. Whatever the capital is. I forget the name. Begin with an L, right? But anyways, I got there and I met up with the leader of the sketchy thieves guild or whatever they call it, the Bloody Ravens. Is that right? Uh, she's an old lady. She was very cool. I liked her character a lot. And I did 3 tasks for her. And I had just finished those 3 tasks and was just starting on the next thing. I was actually invading the castle, right? Yeah, through the sewers. When I ended.
Oh, to assassinate the Pope.
Yeah, to assassinate the Pope.
Oh,
and I
bummer.
thought that was.
I wish you got that far.
Yeah, well, I may play more. But yeah, it was very interesting. A lot of the plot lines and the story. I loved how simple and easy it was to figure out what the heck I was supposed to do. I felt like in Final Fantasy VI, I didn't always know exactly what to do to get the story to progress. But in this game, I always knew what I was supposed to do. I could look it on my map. I could see exactly where I needed to go next. And that gave me a level of confidence about this game of like, okay, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. And it made it flow really, really well for me.
Nice. Did you see the little skit after you do those tasks, I think? When Rokaru teases Laphicet about the Mabu curry?
Absolutely. Boy, I want some of that Mabu curry. I don't know exactly what's in it.
I don't either, but
Maggie
it looked
Lou
really
said
good.
it was made of alligator with human blood, so it didn't really make me want to have any. But I definitely really like the characters' interactions.
Eisen corrected that. It was the blood of a witch, I thought.
Oh, that's right. A blood of a lying witch.
Lion witch, yeah. Yeah, that's. And sadly, I did make it further than you, so there was this really funny cutscene, that skit that I saw before I got to my 10 hours, where Rokaru Eisen is telling Laphicet about how women, how they look different and how they can be deceiving, which was hilarious. Did you do any of the side quest stuff? Like, you mentioned the Code Red monsters. Did you unlock this? I'm pretty sure you unlocked the scout ship.
Absolutely. The scout ship was really cool. It's something I've seen almost identically before in other games. So I'm wondering if Tales has this in earlier Tales. Because this is right out of a bunch of different games.
I don't recall it being in any other Tales games, but I could be mistaken, so tweet me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, so my example that I thought of, and this is a JRPG that I've played that you have not, is that Hyperdimension Neptunia has the exact same mechanic, but exploring dungeons. Except it's much more advanced and different options and things like that. But it's basically wrote the exact same thing. And it's very similar to Dragon Age Inquisition with the missions and things like that. There's been this type of mechanic in a lot of games, but I still enjoy it. Even though it's just like, oh, just do it, and it just happens. Oh, yeah, also, I assume you're talking about, like, the serving minigame and the balloon popping minigame. I tried them all. I was successful in the first level of all of them, and got whatever the reward was. I was really upset when I got the reward, and it was just the dumbest possible outfit ever. Like a giant stuffed animal Pokemon thing. It's like, oh my god, I don't want this. I'm not going to put my badass Velvet in this outfit. But yeah, they were interesting. I thought the serving minigame was more fun and felt more fair to me. But I liked them all. The one thing I didn't like, the fucking cats. I could not stand
I was going to ask
cats.
about the cats.
First of all, the way they talked just hurt my ears. It made every part of my body want to clench. I just couldn't stand them. I wanted to just strangle the little things. And then I'm out there collecting all these souls over the place, and I get to the cat's chest. I'm like, okay, I can spend these souls. And I get, something cosmetic. I went to one chest, and it's like, this chest will take 75 souls. I think, oh, wow, 75 souls. Gotta be something awesome. You know what I got? What did I get? Guess.
A cat.
I got fucking nothing. I don't know. It says, yes, you've unlocked a cat. But it didn't give me anything.
Yeah, and it gets more expensive every one you open. So what I did this playthrough is I didn't open the ones in the very beginning of the game because I knew 100% I got all those. And I was just saving my souls for the end chests that I know I didn't get in the last playthrough.
Yeah, I did not like that mechanic. But I liked the mini games where you earn Tails coins, and I liked that there was mostly cosmetics, but you could save up for other in-game potions and things like that. I thought it was cool.
Did you do any of the I'm having a brain fart of what it's called. Upgrading your weapons.
Absolutely.
What did you think of that?
So strange thing about this game is that I didn't get the weapons. I still don't kind of get the weapons. Like, oh, you have an amber belt. Oh, here's another amber belt. Here's a fucking another amber belt. Why don't you just have like 20 amber belts?
The stats and different abilities they might have are different.
I saw that. But overall, they're real close, except for the random stats which are added. So I didn't really know what to do with it. So I just broke down all the extras and then enhanced all my normal ones. And I guess that's what you're supposed to do. But it felt like it was such a long time between getting like a real upgrade that I did. I had everything +3 at the end when I stopped playing. So I was able to upgrade basically all the items on all my characters to as far as I could. And I did it. I did it all, but I didn't really see the point because, again, combat was so easy. Now, combat was probably easy because I was upgrading everything, because I was doing some grinding. But yeah, I definitely used the upgrade system again. The overall feeling I would have is that it was more complicated than I feel like a game like this needed to be.
Now, you unlock things to upgrade them even more than +3 later in the game, too, so.
Oh, absolutely. I just didn't have the materials.
And it's funny, for some reason, talking about complication, and I know your love of introducing new things, like, later in the game. I ended at level 25, a bit, pretty much further than you. And I got the last character that joins your party, and you know, when you have a full party plus extra characters, then it unlocks a whole thing where you can switch characters in and out of combat at will. Well, not at will, depending on how many points you have stored up. But yeah, so that unlocks too. I think 8 hours in on an average playthrough.
Well, I obviously never got there, but the thing is that I get it. I like complicated stuff. I like mechanics that make you think. It's just always like, why have it if the game doesn't require it? And it makes it strange to me whenever something is complicated, but it doesn't seem to help because maybe it's so easy to begin with.
Well, if you found it so easy, why didn't you just try it on a harder difficulty?
Oh, I wasn't going to play that long, and I wanted to see us get as far as possible. And I want to play how the developers want it to be played.
Well, I usually play the Tales games on normal difficulty the first time, and the second time I play it on harder difficulty with the New Game Plus. I didn't this time because I wanted to see how far I could get. But I know a lot of people that play the game the first time through on the hardest difficulty. And that's supposedly where the combat and strategy really shine, because you really have to think about enemies' weaknesses, you know, switching characters to do special things. And
absolutely. And I can see the appeal of all the different systems. I just don't think that the game has the accuracy and controls to denote that level of difficulty. Because the controls, honestly, in combat were a little bit sloppy. It did not feel super precise.
Well, I mean, to me, this is, and people are going to probably shout at me again, probably one of the best, that I remember, guys, combats in the Tales games, so.
It wasn't bad. It just wasn't like a dedicated combat game would be. It's not like God of War or something like that.
No, but God of War is not really an RPG.
Well, of course not.
So, overall, what did you think of the game as a whole package?
Overall, as a whole package, and this is going to probably shock you, I really, really like this game. Now, you might think, oh, but Pierre, you've shit on the combat. You've shit on this. Yeah, I get it. But as an overall package, I think the characters and the story and the music really outweigh that. I mean, I've been humming the exploration sound in the Geddes Lakes in my head for the last week. I really love the entire package, the presentation. It all kind of comes together that is far beyond the individual parts. And this is the first Tales game I've ever played, and I definitely enjoyed it. And as I've mentioned a couple times, I may finish this just to see what happens with these characters that I've come to really enjoy, just their banter. So I may come back now, like I said last time. I will be finishing Mass Effect before we play Mass Effect 2 on this podcast. And I commit to finishing this before we play the next Tales game on this podcast.
Ooh, that might be stretching it thin.
Well, it all
because
depends on when you schedule the next Tales game.
Well, that depends on when Tales of Arise comes out.
Oh, that's right. We're going to play Tales of Arise on release.
Yep.
Oh, geez. What's that, March, April?
I don't think it has a release date yet. It just says 2020. So you
Okay.
might be okay.
I will keep my eyes out, and I will commit to everyone listening and to you, Kalisa. I will roll credits on Tales of Berseria before Tales of Arise comes out.
Holy shit, I'll finally be able to talk about a Tales game to you without spoiling anything, maybe.
Yeah,
even though I already have.
This game definitely has its weaknesses. The graphics are too simplistic. The combat's a little sloppy. It's a little too easy. The characters and overall the aesthetic, the cutscenes, the skits, all make up for it, and I really enjoyed my time with this game. So what was your impressions after, playing it when it first came out and now replaying it again?
Well, like I said, I definitely noticed, I noticed it the first time I played through it, especially after playing Zestiria a year before, of, how the dungeons and most of the areas looked pretty bland. Obviously, we talked about there were areas that were absolutely beautiful. I loved the music. Velvet's theme to me is hauntingly awesome. And the characters, but in every Tales game, the characters are the bread and butter of the game. They are what sells the game. They are just the dynamic of the party. I believe that the writers do a great job of bringing characters together and making them likable, mostly. Benfu, that little mascot, Malakim, I can't stand.
But he was fitting for Magilu, right?
I still can't stand Benfu. Oh my god, I can't stand it. And no offense to the voice actor who did his voice, so fucking annoying.
Kalisa, you may not understand this, but I'm guessing that that's not how he talks all the time.
No, it's of course not. It's actually probably a girl doing Benfu's voice, I'm guessing. I should have looked it up beforehand. And I know the whole thing was to kind of be annoying with it, but it's so annoying.
I would say in a game that feels very Japanese, that was the most Japanese part.
Probably. But yeah, just the relationship with the characters and everything. Like, I really like Rokaru and Aizen's bromance going on. I really like the relationship between Velvet and Laphicet. And eventually there's other character moments involved where Velvet gets more ties to Aizen and stuff like that. I think they all grow. And even though they still threaten to kill each other when you're almost done with the game, it's more of like a family arguing than anything else. And I think their personalities really lead to that. Like, you're right. Like you said, Velvet's a little dull, especially in the beginning of the game. Rokaru, I really like his character. But then you get Magilu. That kind of just brings it all together. Just like a crazy family.
Absolutely. When she showed up, that totally changed my opinion of the entire game. Because she brought everything together in a really great way. Now, let's compare just briefly, because we just played Mass Effect, right? And that was a very, very, very Western game. It was incredibly open. After the very beginning sequence, you then go to the Citadel, and it's basically just do whatever the hell you want. Whereas this game was very, do this, do this, do this, do this. You have to do it all in the exact right order. What did you feel of that difference?
Well, I think I've explained it to you really well in the past, where a Western RPG is more that you are the story, a JRPG is that you're watching the story. And it just depends on what you like. I'm not going to finish Mass Effect. I could see the allure. I could see the characters were really interesting. I didn't really like the game 100% because of things we discussed. And I'd have to say that the Tales characters were more colorful and more interesting to me.
I agree they're more colorful and more interesting, some of them. But the thing about a Western RPG like Mass Effect, and we're going to get into this when we go down my list of other Western RPGs, is that they're more believable.
Yeah.
They're more realistic.
And I get that.
And therefore, when things happen to them and they have real emotions, it hits you harder because it's like these are almost real people. And when we get into games that are super realistic, like The Witcher, you're going to see that more as well.
Well, it might be that I'm more emotional than you at times. There were times in Tales of Berseria much later in the game that it did bring tears to my eyes. And one scene particularly, I was almost crying.
Mass Effect has brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah, but now we're just comparing apples to oranges.
Yes, you're right.
I mean, we could do a whole podcast of arguing the benefits of why I like JRPGs better and you like Western RPGs
it's
better.
Because
That's
you're
not
wrong. Obviously, Western RPGs are definitively better than JRPGs. Some JRPGs can be good, but Western RPGs are going to be better.
So, would you recommend this game?
Yes, absolutely. I would recommend this as a great starter to the Tales entry, especially if you like playing with a female protagonist like I do. I think it's a good game. I think that there are probably other Tales games which someone could start on, and maybe some people can suggest other great Tales games. You can tweet at me at PureBlueOctopus if you have any suggestions. But absolutely, I think this is a fantastic game, and I think that it's a really great entry into the Tales series and something completely different than I've played before. I've played a lot of things that had elements of this, but never anything quite like this exactly.
Awesome. And I'm glad that you finally got to play a Tales game.
Yeah. All right, so speaking of different types of RPGs.
Oh, God.
So next time on She Made Me Play, I am going to ask Kalisa.
Ask or force?
Well, force. I'm going to ask with authority. Kalisa to play the very first Dungeons & Dragons computer game that I ever played. So Kalisa and I, she's mentioned in other podcasts, we actually play Dungeons & Dragons together over the internet. And we love Dungeons & Dragons. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons since I was like 12 years old. And this was the very first Dungeons & Dragons game that I played. It wasn't the first one that came out, but it was one of the first ones. One of the first handful. It was an old gold box game by Strategic Simulations.
Was it one of those floppy disks that nowadays kids don't even know what they are because they really actually were floppy?
Well, it wasn't the floppy kind because that was what's called a 5 1/4 inch disc. But this one did come on 3 1/2 inch discs, which were the more plasticky floppy discs. But they were still floppy on the inside. And yes, this game weighs in at just over a megabyte in total size. And
I saw pictures. I believe it.
It has amazing 16-color EGA graphics and ad-lib sound. This is I believe it's the second or third Dungeons & Dragons games ever for PC. It is Champions of Krynn, based on the Dragonlance series of books, which were my favorite when I was a tween. And I read them like 7 times. And it really brought the whole Dungeons & Dragons experience together. So we're going to kick it real old school from 1990. I wasn't even in high school then.
Do you want to know how old I was?
Yeah, you were barely born.
I'm not that young, but thanks, I guess.
So,
oh, great.
Wish her luck. We're going to be firing this up in DOSBox. It should be a great romping good time.
I'm not looking forward to this one. I'd rather play Bloodborne.
I am positive that you would rather play Bloodborne.
Oh, God. Well, thanks for joining us again, guys. And as you heard, I'm going to be tortured next week by playing Champions of Krynn. This is Kalisa.
And this is Pure Blue Octopus.
Good night.
Thank you. All right, stop the presses. Stop the presses. Do we have presses?
No, we don't. Not yet. We have Twitter.
I've always wanted to say stop the presses.
Maybe someday, but not right now.
So next episode is not going to be Champions of Krynn.
Oh my God, I'm so happy. Have you guys seen the freaking screenshots of that thing?
Hey, I don't want to hear fucking chatter from the
Oh
peanut
my
gallery.
God.
This was my favorite game when I was like 13.
Oh my God, I'm so excited. I don't have to play it yet.
Yeah, we get it. So I'm going to insert a new choice as a special first ever She Made Me Play game review. And we're going to do this right as it comes out, and we're going to have it ready for you as soon as possible so you can see what we think. And it's going to be Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore for the Nintendo Switch.
Yay, Switch!
Because I played it for the Wii U, and I fucking love this game. It is absolutely incredible. And I know Kalisa's going to love it too.
Does it have an anime intro?
It has one of the best anime intros ever.
Yay! Anime intro!
So that'll be a special episode next time. Thank you very much. We have been overwhelmed by the response from the first 2 episodes that we've released.
Yeah, it's been amazing, guys. Actually, 3, because, this is tacking on to Berseria, so
Well,
it would have
yeah,
been
but
3 episodes.
we haven't done it yet.
Well, yeah. But anyways, thank you so much. I mean, all the thoughtful comments on Reddit and all the feedback on Twitter. You guys have been great. And right now, we're in 21 different countries, counting the US, of course.
I don't even know if I can name 21 countries.
I'm still waiting for us to get into Japan. I'm a big anime and manga geek. I would be so geekily nerdgasm excited when we get a download from Japan. So, Japanese listeners out there, come on, make me happy.
I was happy to see South Korea because I'm a huge Samsung fan.
Well, yeah, duh.
All right, well, we'll see you next time with a special She Made Me Play review of Tokyo Mirage Sessions Sharp FE Encore on the Switch.
Yay, no champions of Kryn.
Shh, we'll play it. Bye-bye. Thanks again.
See you next week.